Oh,
I
it's
think
on.
it's on.
Oh, hey everyone. My name is Talha. I'm the co-founder and CTO at remotebase.com. With me is Bryan. Bryan is the senior director of engineering at Sustain.Life. Has 20 years of experience. I think 20 plus years of experience working in the industry, and as good as it
Something
gets.
like
To be
that.
honest, I've been speaking with Bryan for the past 10 minutes and I'm impressed. So, Bryan, thanks for joining us, man.
Oh, you're welcome.
How
I'm
how
very
have you
happy to
been?
be here.
How's it going, man? Like end of the year, wrapping things up, preparing to go into the holidays. Like, how's it all
Yeah.
working out for you?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thanks for having me on. And yeah, it's the end of the year. It's very exciting. Sustain.Life had a quite a good year. I'm personally very happy with things. And as the year comes to an end, I'm looking forward to settling into a break with my family.
Oh, nice. By the way, climate tech had a really good year. I know recession, the things are not working out well with the tech industry and all, but climate tech is going really well, and we'll obviously touch base on that. So that
Yeah,
probably has worked out for you.
yeah, it's definitely in the papers more this year than other years, and it's on the front of people's minds, and people seem
Yeah.
more informed about it.
Hmm.
It's definitely a thing. I think at
Yeah.
the start of this year, the term climate tech hadn't been phrased. I think it got coined during this year, if my
Yeah,
memory
and
serves.
I got to learn about this term in TechCrunch Climate Conference. So probably they're the people who have been coining terms and all. And everybody was like, this is the next big thing. Climate tech is here. Now we're gonna save the world and all. So has it been hectic for you? I mean, with everybody, all eyes on the climate tech and all the companies in this space. So how was this year
Uh,
like for you?
well, I would say that there's definitely more attention on it this year.
Hmm.
When we started the year, uh, Sustain.Life, well, the Sustain.Life we only really launched last year, and the company itself is only about 2 years old. So
Oh.
at the start of this year, we were still, trying to find out how we could be relevant. We were all looking for product market fit. And throughout the year, then we began to circle around something that works for us, and it resonated with customers and investors. And we really had an inflection point this year where we went from that phase of being a startup to a
Hmm.
scale up. And, with that comes its own challenges and its own
Yeah.
excitement. And, you know, it,
Hmm.
it's reasonable to think that uh, the prevalence of climate in the news was definitely a tailwind for that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree to that. Uh, and then it's surprising, like you not even surprising, like you were part of the founding team that was looking for the product market fit, and then in the climate space, like, and then obviously with everyone's attention there and also, how was it? Like, I mean, it's like probably going back into the dot-com bubble where everybody is like looking at you and looking at your company or following your company. So I think climate space is also getting that attention now. So
Yes, I can agree with a lot of that. Like if we want to look back to the dot-com bubble of 20 years ago, it was around, wasn't it? Google got founded in 99, 98, 99, and then the dot-com crash was in 2001. So,
mm,
at that
mm,
time, if you remember, Yahoo and Ask Jeeves and the Alta Vista, there was like us, there was no end of search engines. And
mm,
and today there's quite a few players in the climate tech carbon accounting space already. Um,
mm,
and then there was well, what happened in 2001 with the economy, and there's echoes of that today. So there's a lot of parallels between that time and now. And perhaps in the same way that certain companies came out of the 2001 and very strongly, such as like Google and Amazon,
mm,
companies today. You know,
mm.
my aspiration is that we come out of what's going on now and with the same sort of strength. If, if
To be
if we can do this right, and I think we
yeah,
can.
yeah,
We've got a good team.
yeah. And to be honest, like everybody thinks that this is needed, like people need to work on the climate, like top of the top minds need to focus in this space. So for example, we had a few like heat sessions in the US, in California. So they lasted for not more than a week, but nobody was ready for it. So for example, the thermostat of my house, it broke, like it couldn't take the heat,
It
it
broke.
wasn't programmed for that. So
Yes.
this building where I live in, it's 30 years old. And if you go back just 30 years, nobody knew that, you would need the thermostats are going to break. And this building where I live, it doesn't have air conditioning because California houses in the California, they never needed one. Like, the weather was used to be so good and all. And now I was recently reading up in the news and all, when heat strokes happened and when the heat wave came, so nobody was ready for it. And then one night everybody had air conditioning on, whoever could. And then there was a chance of a blackout, and somebody texted at the grid station that, can you check all the systems? And then they checked the system, and one text, it saved the blackout, and there was news in New York Times and all. So that gave me the idea or the impression that nobody was ready for this. Like, we weren't even ready for this until a year ago, and suddenly everything has changed. All these companies coming up, and a lot of people have started working in this space, which is very interesting, like, to be
Yeah,
honest.
absolutely. And it's
Mm.
it's not just the heat, but it's the cold as well. Like there's more polar vortexes in the news than there ever was before. In
Yeah.
fact, I'm only familiar with that term in the past few years. And it's not just US as well. Here in Europe, where
Hmm.
I am, we've had record-breaking summer heat
Hmm.
this uh, in the summer just passed. And
Hmm.
at the moment, we're going through a really cold spell, which is unseasonable for this time of year for us.
Exactly. And do you think we would be able to solve this? I mean, we're humans, we get away with almost everything we imagine. Not everything, but we eventually get there. But what are your thoughts on this? Like, you've been in the space, you know what's up and all. So are the people in the
Yeah,
space good enough? Do you think that we have enough people to solve this problem in this space, or we have enough interest in the space?
I hope so. And I think there is. The space is from what I can see is massive. Like the role that we play in it is carbon counting, and or we try and support businesses with their decision making so they can reduce their impact. And
Hmm.
if enough companies do that, and other startups can tackle this problem from a different angle, and they can have an impact. I think it's the aggregate of all of those efforts um, that will turn the tide on this, or mitigate the
Hmm.
risks, or
Hmm.
you know bring this back in line as best we
Very
can.
much, very much. And
Well, we
how do
hope. Right?
I mean, we can hope for it, like, and obviously we can strive for it. But how do you see sustain life coming into picture? Like, what do you guys do? I'm very interested. I've been reading up. Like, it's a pretty good business model. Like, you let the companies know, you make them more environment friendly, which is great.
Yeah.
Uh,
So Sustain.Life it's a SaaS company. So we build a SaaS platform, and
mhm,
we do it for customers who want to fight climate change and want to future-proof their companies and their businesses for climate
mhm,
change by supporting them and helping them make decisions to minimize their impact on the environment. Uh,
mhm,
we we make ESG tools uh, for our customers that empowers them to make better decisions, reduce their emissions, which ultimately has the effect that we want. For
mhm,
for me
mhm,
personally, as a technologist,
mhm,
what's important is that our company, Sustain, is a technology company, uh, which is really good because some players in this space have armies of sustainability consultants behind the scene doing work on behalf of their clients. But
mhm,
our approach was a technological approach. So the sustainability team that we have,
mhm,
we scale their expertise into the system, and
mhm,
they don't actually do the consulting work directly for the clients themselves. So that allows
mhm,
us to scale better. Like the marginal cost for us to take on an extra customer to help them is, you know, moving a slider on a scale set on the cloud. It's just extra
Hmm.
traffic, and that sort of
Yeah.
scale is a solved problem. So that means that we can support more and more and more companies and hopefully have a bigger impact.
And in terms of traction and interest, like, are you able to get enough companies interested in this? Like, are companies like have companies started to focus in this direction as well? Like, because previously all the companies, nobody, like we discussed, nobody thought that this would you would come to a point where we'd start discussing the environment itself and all of that. So, do you think companies are serious enough to use such a product?
I think the tide is turning to yes
Mm-hmm.
on that question.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier this year in the US, I think it was the
Mm-hmm.
SEC. Um, they brought a bill I'm so I'm from Europe. I'm not exactly
Yeah, yeah.
familiar with how the US system works, but they're arguing a bill or they're passing a bill at the moment that requires companies to be able to disclose their impact on the environment. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
think that law has been
Mhm.
ratified yet, but if it does, companies will have a requirement to be able to report or disclose their impact on the environment. And
Mhm.
we're there to help them with that.
Yeah, and if such a law does come in or does come into effect, then obviously other countries probably are gonna follow in the same footsteps, and then we'll see a lot of similar companies coming up for this. Like, obviously, like we have Vanta for SOC2, SOC2, and then obviously we'll have climate tech companies that certify if your company is climate friendly or not. And I mean, it's a
Yeah,
good concept.
yeah, and there's no well, there is an end, but there's quite a few certifications in this space. There's like B Corp and GRI and new ones that are coming out. And as
Hmm.
well as that, other countries have other standards, and Europe is a little bit ahead of the US in terms of regulation.
Very
And
much,
you
very
know,
much. Yeah.
we're looking across the board and seeing how we can be relevant to everybody.
Sounds fair. And so, do people who work in your company, do they have to be aware of all the environment related issues? Like, do they need to be interested, or it's just like you hire anybody?
Well, we like to be a
By the
sustainable.
way, sorry, this question is for those who wants to apply as a remote worker in your company. So,
Well, not everybody is. My personally, my life has become more sustainable since I've started working here. Since I've started to see the real impact of things, and once you measure things and you can see the impact of your actions, you begin to think, well, maybe I can improve myself. So I've personally started composting, and I've done other things, and other people in the company have done other things. We actually measure our own company carbon footprint, and we offset our own emissions and
mm-hmm,
or scope 3 emissions, so that we are carbon neutral as a company ourselves. uh,
mm-hmm,
and we don't have an office, we're fully remote, we don't have a building,
mm-hmm,
so we're able to have downward pressure on the amount of emissions we generate. And
mm-hmm,
it's that kind of systematic thinking that we take that into our personal lives, and every little bit helps. And
mm-hmm,
for people who will come and work for us in the future as we grow and scale, they'll
mm-hmm,
no one there's no requirement at the door saying, you have to be this sustainable to join, but
mm-hmm,
it's
mm-hmm.
part of the DNA of the culture of the company.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And on that topic, like for example, so I've always been curious. So recently I read somewhere that I'm not obviously claiming that it's true, but I read somewhere that probably Google claimed that they are like 100%, their carbon footprint is like they are on clean energy and there isn't any footprint. Or are there companies that are completely clean, they're scalable as well at the same time, or it's just like it's not true
Well,
or it's not possible?
I don't know the answer to that, and I wouldn't be in a position to be able to say. I do know that the measurement of the environment of a company's carbon inventory is, a complicated, it's a challenging
Hmm.
problem. In fact, it's a fractal problem,
It's
because
very
the more
very
you
much.
look at one particular component, the more details there are that change the number you're trying to calculate. And that's why
Hmm.
technology is very suitable to solve that kind of problem, as opposed to the traditional way. But then, and that's just on the surface. And once you get into it a little bit more, carbon emissions get broken down in different ways, and there's scope 1, 2, or 3, and they have to be counted different ways and accounted for different ways, and mitigated in different ways. So, yeah, it's really, to say that a company is neutral is beyond my skill, I'm afraid. So I
Yeah,
wouldn't be
yeah.
qualified to answer that.
And that makes sense as well. And honestly, in my opinion, our relationship with this thing is has a love and hate element to it. So, for example, in California, so they had probably given a deadline previously that by 2025 there won't be any gas cars in California, but we
Mhm.
still have a lot of, and they've extended that deadline to probably 2035. And a lot of people are saying that even by 2035 they'll still have, like, not everybody's going to be on an EV, or people still are going to be driving gas cars. So humans also have a love hate relationship with when it comes to being clean, or when it comes to eating healthy and all, and in this case, when it comes to having a low carbon footprint and all. What
Yeah,
are your thoughts on that?
you're right. It is challenging. It's political as well. And if you talk about having a target for 20 years into the future, or 10 years into the future, that kind of decision making spans terms of government, and policy plays a large part in this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think there's a simple answer, and I think it's just going to take a lot of people with a mission mindset to keep working at it, and you know hopefully at a point that'll be get excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully at a point that will have a critical mass, and it'll start to see real results. But again, it's hard to know and it's hard to predict, and
Mm.
uh, I've, I wouldn't even know where to start, how to answer that.
But can
Only
we
because,
agree on?
sorry, go on.
Yeah, yeah, sorry. I mean, it's gonna be a follow-up question, but please continue.
No, no, I love the idea, and people are inherently good, and want to live a healthier lifestyle and want to have a clean environment. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it's it's a challenging ask, and it's going to take time and perseverance and tenacity, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. But do you also think that this space will have the unfair advantage in terms of policies and all of that? Because, or do you think it's just gonna die out? So, for example, if we have a good summer in 2023, nobody's gonna be looking for or be investing in the tech space anymore.
Oh, I hope not. I hope this here, even for my own interests, I hope this industry is here for good. It, I believe it is. I believe that we'll be working in this space for a long, long time. It's
Yeah.
it has to be that there's no other way. There's enough science behind this so that it's
Oh yeah,
real.
yeah,
And
yeah. There is science, and then a lot of problems to solve as well. A lot of good problems.
yeah, and
um,
it's important work.
yeah, it's probably the most important work, at least for a couple of years. Pretty good, Brian. And so, by the way, before this podcast, I was going through your LinkedIn profile, and I saw that you worked in the Walmart Global Tech. So I
I
have a few
do.
friends who work in Walmart Global Tech, live in the Bay Area as well. So from time to time, I have a chance to discuss their tech with them as well. So Walmart was a big company,
It
and
was
Sustain is a
a big
smaller
one.
one. So biggest probably in your career. And then
I think it's a Fortune 1. I believe it's the biggest company in
yeah,
terms of
as
headcount.
big as it gets. So and then obviously in terms of processes and everything, it should be. And I'm assuming that it's more mature than Sustain or your current company where you're working at. So what brought this transition upon? Like, why did you leave? I know. So once you've engineered in a bigger team, once you've solved. I'm not saying that Walmart gives you the chance to solve bigger problems, but it's difficult to make that transition into a smaller team where the processes are not that defined, and you have to wear a lot of hats and then be in a lot of roles at the same time.
Yeah, it's great. The
Oh, you
it's
remember now? Oh, yeah, I remember. I
well,
like your
that's
face,
an
man.
interesting journey. I I was involved with an e-commerce startup a number of years ago called Jet.com. It was based out of
Yeah,
New
I saw
Jersey,
that. Yeah, that
and
was nice.
uh, Jet.com, it was almost a magical company. And
Oh,
the
nice.
in terms of scale, in terms of
Hmm.
how it was organized, it really opened my eyes to how certain things got done and how things could be done, and how a lot of things you read in books or read in blogs or hear people present at conferences, you can see it manifest and crystallize in real life, and you can see what scale looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and when I was working in Jet.com, Jet had a Dublin office, or they opened up a Dublin engineering office, and I got
Mm-hmm.
involved there, and I was doing engineering management work.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I I contributed to the platform, and I ran teams that contributed to the platform. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but Jet got bought by Walmart in a acquisition in 2016,
Oh,
and
nice.
it
That's
was
how
through
you.
that I moved into
Uh-huh.
Walmart.
Nice. So how was that acquisition like? Was it big? I mean, what happened? Like, how did
Well,
Walmart come in and, then you transferred all the systems to them and all? Like, how did that go?
uh, yeah, that's a good question. It was, uh, and you should. My visibility on how this was from a very distinct vantage point. I only saw certain
Mm-hmm.
things, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, within Jet, I was responsible. I worked in the pricing team, and the unique feature of Jet was that the pricing was dynamic. So back in Jet, they used to generate prices on the fly. So depending on how much stuff was in your basket or your cart, and what was in the
Mm-hmm.
inventory,
Nice.
so
Nice.
all those prices would
Nice.
be dynamic. And
Uh-huh.
I believe that Walmart wanted that feature. That's what I understood. So when I was working then in Walmart, I was working on their marketplace pricing team, where I was
Mm-hmm.
doing pricing for their marketplace on their Walmart.com. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I got to see the transition from very small, uh, very high scale to very big and very very high scale.
Very, very big. Yeah.
The difference in culture and the effect that you know that had on decision making. And in terms of just being able to stand back and observe the difference in how all that worked, and how decisions got made, the effective process, and even you know locations all over the world, and that kind of collaboration, it really was a learning experience amongst anything else. um, However, sorry,
Mm.
I think you're going to
No,
ask
no,
a
I'm
question.
just I'm just thinking like, yeah, just continue. This is great. Like, honestly, like.
And that's how I ended up in San Bruno and down in Sunnyvale a couple of times.
So when was the last time you ended up in the Bay? Like, you came to the Bay Area or
I
visited
was
Bay
in
Area?
Sunnyvale, I believe, last time, and just a couple of months before COVID. So the summer of
Oh,
2019, I think I was there last.
oh, nice. Good
And
times to be here.
then COVID, happened,
Yeah.
and that had a chilling effect on, you know, travel and going to an office. So
Hmm.
out of that was, remote work, and it was almost forced on us, and we were forced to adapt quickly and figure out the angles and figure out how it worked and what didn't work,
Mm-hmm.
and that was
Hmm.
a here we go again, a whole new set of learning. And
I get it, and I'm gonna touch base on that, Brian. But because remote work is very close to my heart, like I've already told you, so we'll touch base on that. But so you said that the pricing feature was something that Walmart was after, like dynamic pricing.
that's what I was told. Like again, I wasn't in the room where those decisions
No,
got made. I
but
was
I don't want you to recall those decisions. I mean, but what I'm interested to know is like there is a feature that works really well, and a bigger company sees that, fitting well into their whatever systems and all. So why not? Why didn't Walmart build it on their own? Like, what was so special about the core of the feature or the process that they had to acquire the company? In your opinion, obviously, like.
uh I don't know. as I was, it's probably worth saying at this point that I was joining Jet around the same time the acquisition happened. So I was very much after the fact when,
Hmm.
but I believe for the first year or so after an acquisition, Walmart,
Hmm.
allows the integration to happen. So Jet was able to continue being Jet and have that culture for quite a while
Hmm.
before it started to change. And then Ireland being, not one of the key locations, the effects of Walmart culture and how that, uh, you know, affected or changed the day-to-day working of the engineers in Dublin took
Hmm.
maybe another year. So even a year, 2 years after the acquisition, it was very
Hmm.
much operating as Jet.com and Jet.com culture. So
Hmm.
uh, it was great to be able to operate in that space and play at that scale. Um, and it was great, working for Walmart. But then as the culture came in, you could see that transition and the change. So, full of learning opportunities, but I wouldn't be really a good person to comment or have run commentary on the decision making behind
Obviously,
Walmart
obviously.
versus what should happen.
Uh, and I was just curious to know, but and also this is great because if you were in Dublin and Jet.com's head office was in New Jersey, so you, essentially to some extent you were working remotely. I know you had a team in Dublin and you had an office there as well, but then you had to connect with the, I mean, teams in New Jersey from time to time. And then
Yeah,
this transition happened. I mean, the company getting acquired by a bigger company. So did it change your working, style in any way? Your anything, and did anything change for you because somehow you were in Dublin working remotely with the US people, and then you don't know what's going on. You haven't met with the new people from Walmart a lot. You probably visited here, and also how did how did it work out for you overall? And this is the time when remote work isn't there. Like, it's
yeah. Well, if you could bear with me a second, I'll just go back a step. Prior to working for Jet.com, I worked for an Irish bookmaker. Uh,
yeah, saw
And
that.
we used to have an office in Melbourne, Australia, or there was an engineering office in Melbourne, Australia.
Oh,
So for
nice.
4 years prior to that, I had built up the muscle memory or the practice for working with component or collaborating with or working with a team that was 11 to 12 hours time difference away from where I was.
Hmm.
And with such a little overlap, you learn how to be more effective, maybe perhaps.
Very, you learned a lot of things. You learned a lot of
Yeah,
hacks.
you
It's
absolutely
all
do.
hacks. Trust
Oh,
me.
it's the
With
hardest
every
part
time
of
zone
our
comes a new hack. Yeah.
industry. So when I went to work with Jet.com and I was collaborating
Uh,
with people in New Jersey, which was only 5 hours difference, it seemed a
mm,
lot easier all of a sudden. Like,
oh, it
and
seemed a lot easier.
culturally, Ireland and the US are, very alike. So that bridge wasn't too hard to navigate, or that's the wrong metaphor, but it was easy. When it moved into Walmart, though, the people I had to work with suddenly were based on the West Coast USA, so which is
Exactly.
8 hours
Sudden
difference.
time. Exactly. A new time zone for you.
Yeah, and I also worked with a team out of Bangalore in India, which was five and a
Oh,
half hours
shit.
the other direction. So
Yeah.
in the morning, I'd worked with my Indian team, and then in the evening, I'd worked with my American team, and I was kind of caught in between. So
Uh huh.
just that change alone changed how I had to work, which had an effect on, my
Yeah.
teams,
It does
how
have an effect. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
what success looks like changed completely.
And
And
sorry, but I really want to add this here. So with remote base, we hire engineers from all around the world. So whenever a new country gets added into our list, so my life gets upside down. Like everything changes if I have to interact with them. So for me, by the way, and uh, I live in the US, and then we have a lot of people from Pakistan and then all these countries. So for me, the hardest thing is to take a 4:30 a.m. morning call, stand up call every single day.
I bet it is. Uh,
That
You know, logistically, that's hard. And over a long enough time period, and it's easy to do maybe for a very short time because you
Yeah.
can concentrate, but over a long enough time period, and the other aspects of your life, have to
Hmm.
be accounted for as well, and you know, it becomes sometimes it becomes a juggling act, I found, and
Yeah.
you know, that's not sustainable. And was one of the factors that led to me, walking away from Walmart and leaving Walmart. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
coincidentally, the Sustain.Life, the
Mm-hmm.
founders from Sustain.Life were
Mm-hmm.
uh, ex-Jet. They were all from Jet. So
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Jet.com, pardon me.
Nice. Nice.
So
Nice.
so when I joined Sustain.Life, I joined a team whose relationship went back years and years. So there was a high level of understanding. There was a high level of trust, and
Mm-hmm.
we almost had a culture pre-baked that we could leverage to be an effective company out of the gate.
I get it. And probably the most important thing for me to know is like, okay, you had like founders from jet.com. There was already like you guys trusted each other and you guys already knew like how to work with each other. But what's your advice for people who join the company remotely? So you've worked remotely with a lot of companies. You've seen acquisitions happen. You've worked on it at a very large scale. So for example, let's say if a remote engineer they join a new company, so what they should do to make sure that they are able to win that trust remotely and they're able to uh, have
Yeah,
that understanding with the current team and all.
yeah, that's maybe the challenge of the age, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
The So this summer, or over the past couple of months, my engineering team doubled in size. We went from four
Hmm.
engineers to nine engineers.
Nice. Nice, 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 amazing, amazing.
Uh, Thank you. And you know, prior to them joining, we had hit a stride. We had great momentum. We
Hmm.
were we had got product market fit, and we got that through a Kanban style work where we were iterating,
Nice,
and trying things, and
nice.
trying to get feedback and lean startup and all that stuff.
With the four
Uh,
engineers, like you had four engineers who were like
we had
striving
four
for the
engineers,
product market.
that's true, but like I had to get involved. The CTO got
Obviously,
involved.
obviously,
There was
obviously,
more people
obviously,
writing code than the four engineers, but the core
100%
team itself.
was, yeah.
Uh, so then we had something that was productive. Uh, we were being able to respond to product, to sales. We were able to build
Hmm.
out features that customers loved. So to
Hmm.
double the size of the team, you run the risk of disrupting that balance or that equilibrium and that momentum. So
Hmm.
for me, it was very important that everybody joining was able to join in a way that acted as a tailwind to this momentum and
Hmm.
supported it rather than, you know, flipped it and everything goes in every direction. So uh, as part of that, I thought about this a lot and tried to figure out a way
Hmm.
of onboarding them into the culture. And
Hmm.
you know, to your question, like how do remote people come in?
Hmm.
They have to come in. It's down to how you pick your candidates, and if you can pick or select candidates, and hopefully, it's a competitive world to hire candidates, so you can't necessarily, you know, you're restricted almost to who applies. So, we got some great candidates in. We got people
Hmm.
who we were able to identify as you know, similar to the culture that was already there. So we knew that difference wouldn't be too much, so that it wouldn't be jarring for them to come in. We tried to
Hmm.
identify candidates who had maybe similar experience or similar outlook or similar ideas on how software could be built in the
Hmm.
way in the way we would like to build software. Now,
Hmm.
just on that point, there's a million ways to build software. Then
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
there's there's a million right ways and there's a million wrong ways.
yeah,
Um,
100%.
and from my perspective, we had developed our right way. It's not the best right way, but it's what
Yeah,
works for
it was
us.
your right way. It was your guys' right way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
it was important that we could find people who could adapt to that and were willing to adapt to that. And, a lot of energy and time was put into trying to manage that transition. And
Hmm.
it worked. Uh, I think the transition was a success. We've hired some excellent people, and our platform and our team, and the company is stronger as a result.
Nice. And how big is the team, the Eng team right now?
Uh, so all in, if we say from the CTO down, it's 12, 13 maybe.
Oh, that's
Very
amazing.
small.
But still, smaller teams, in my opinion, are more effective. And honestly, the first 20 people are as good as it gets. Like, it's like,
Oh yeah, I
and other
agree.
afterward, like, but Brian, what I'm very interested to know is, like you said, that the way you guys solved this problem was like you were finding people who were like closer to the culture you guys have, like defined cultures. For example, if somebody comes in from India as a remote worker, and you guys have, but is it that culture that you're talking about, or is it something else? Like, how does it come into play?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Obviously, engineers from different backgrounds, could come from different cultures,
Hmm.
they have, people have to get on. So, uh, but that's not really what I mean when I talk about culture. Like
Uh-huh.
the engineering culture we have is a DevOps culture. So it's important that, for me anyway, it's important
Hmm.
that there's few handoffs within the chain within my team. So
Hmm.
the engineers who build features are the same engineers who support the features in production.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
handoff with the QA team. There's no
Yeah.
release team. You know,
Oh,
if you're in
nice.
my team and you're here for 3 months, you
Uh-huh.
release to production, and if it breaks, you fix it
Uh-huh.
or find out how to fix it. So
Uh-huh.
it's that culture of pushing accountability and responsibility down to the lowest level, and that's empowering for engineers.
Very much.
Yeah,
Very much.
I
Very,
found
very
it,
much.
yeah, I
And
love it.
and
I can't say it any.
Brian, the ideology you have. So my first job, like I said, was a remote job back in 2013. And I was so when it started, I was only like, I was very new. I was probably the most junior person in the team, and within the first week I was given the server responsibility. Like, I had to sit and wait. So they were using ping dom, and as soon as some
Yeah, yeah,
server glitch happened, I would receive a text message, and my server duty would be start from 2 a.m. and last until 6 a.m.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that gave me a lot of ownership. That gave me a lot of sense that, this is my product, I have to take care of it. If something goes wrong, I am the one responsible. And that sense has helped me a lot, to be honest, throughout my journey. This very I don't know, this very thing has helped me a lot. It's very effective. It's very, very effective.
I, me and you are the same then, because I can't imagine it any other way. And
Mm.
you know, that was the jet culture as well. And the Walmart
Oh,
culture was a little
nice.
bit different. They had, layers and layers of, operations and support teams and release teams and so on. So uh, the so when we started Sustain.Life, or I joined Sustain.Life, and I culture is very important to me. So this idea of removing barriers, removing obstacles, allowing the engineers to have as much control as I can possibly give them
Yeah,
is
yeah.
very, very important. And
100%.
it
100%.
makes it real for people. And,
Very real.
in terms of on call, like we have on call, our engineers get rung. I was on call last week. I got rang. I said,
Yeah.
I've got two PRs open here right here on at the moment that I'm trying to get finished before Christmas. So, you know, everybody's involved. There's a high level of engagement, and that comes from culture. Uh, there's a actually, before I get to that point, there's one other part of it, is that we're an engineering team and it's a
Hmm.
technology company, but we're a product engineering team.
Hmm.
We're engineering itself is only one half of what we do. Makes us
Hmm.
effective. We
Hmm.
work hand in glove with a product team, a sustainability team, and a UX design team.
Hmm.
And those four pillars together make this work. Without them, engineering would just be a bunch of a bunch of people just writing code and aimlessly, you know, doing whatever engineers do.
Hmm.
But working with product, focuses all that energy. So if you take those two things together, where you have a very focused team and a very accountable team that's mission driven,
Hmm.
great things can happen. And I like I believe you can do a lot more with less, and I'm testing to see how far you can push that at the moment.
To be honest, a lot more. For me, the ideal tech team would be 4 or 5 people. To be honest, the eng team, and goes. I know it's impossible. When the product grows, you need people. A lot of
Yes.
people, but still, for me, and even to this day, the people I work with constantly, they are just those 4 to 5 people with whom I started this thing. Like, to be honest, like, not like I'm very comfortable working with them, but there is this, like, we work so efficiently that I never have to go to somebody else in
Yeah, I
that
know what
regard.
you mean. It's like the
So
emotional core of engineering.
very much, yeah, and engineering is a very emotional thing to do. To be honest, you get very emotional when you're doing engineering. So
I
I hear
love it.
you on that.
I don't know about you, but like like when I started in tech, it was in the 90s, and like at the time it was browser
Uh,
wars and Y2K, and you know Steve Jobs going back to Apple, and you know Apple and Microsoft partnership, and
nice,
that's
famous
what it's like.
partnership, famous, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. Yeah, that
Yeah,
happened. Like you were following that back then.
yeah.
Now, how was
But,
it like?
but that was the game back then. The game's
Huh,
changed now. It's bigger, it's more complicated, uh, and there's more players, and there's more pronounced cycles, and you know it takes more observing of it to get a good understanding of what's going on. But the game's the game. It's just it's bigger now.
yeah,
The stakes are higher.
very
But anyway,
much, very much.
there was a point on culture, just to finish off that point, which I think is very important. And years and years ago, these back in the browser wars, it was between Netscape and Microsoft, Internet Explorer,
Hmm.
and there was anti-competitive stuff, and it was all over the news and whatever, whatever. But there was a guy in Netscape. His name was Ben Horowitz.
Hmm.
Excuse me, and he wrote a book called what was it called? What You Do Is Who You Are, and it's a book on business culture, and it's an
Nice.
excellent book, and it
Hmm.
it posits that whatever a new person learns in the first 100 days,
Hmm.
that's the company culture. So you can write
Nice.
in big
Yeah,
foot high letters on the wall about your values and all this, but whatever somebody learns to succeed in the first 100 days
yeah,
is
very
what your
important.
company
Yeah,
culture really is.
so company culture
So
is. Hmm.
that's why onboarding, that high focused attention on people coming into the company in that first 100 days, giving them the keys to production, letting them do releases, shadow on call, you know, make high profile mistakes. Like I took down production, you know, you know,
Yeah, and then you're able to connect with
yeah.
those. Yeah, I made this mistake, and I was that's how I resolved it.
And seeing that ownership and seeing that coming from,
Mm.
as high as the CTO or CEO, it's fantastic. And that's, that when it comes to culture, I always fall back to that idea. Like, how can I shape company culture, every new hire at a time as they come in? That's how I think about it.
and and I think it's a very interesting idea that you've made this reference to the book. So, but how does it change with the new paradigm, and onboarding somebody and giving them and or letting them know of the value is the hardest part for me if I'm doing it virtually. If So, by the way, unfortunately, I haven't met with 80% of the people in remotebase.com. I haven't had a chance to go back to Pakistan in 2 years. I've been busy here and all. So,
Mm,
and onboarding a new person onto the team for me or used to be just like, this is your first code issue, create a PR and let's just
yeah.
take it from here. This is the product, this is the walkthrough. play with it a bit, and then we'll add you to the next sprint. Or and that's not satisfying enough, to be honest, for me. Like that doesn't work for me, in all fairness.
Yeah, you're right. The it's only been a couple. I know you've been doing it for a long time, um, but remote work in the mainstream is only 3 years old, really, since the start of COVID. Before that, it was something people talked about as a thought experiment. But when people were
Yeah.
forced into it, and now it's 3 years later, you know,
Hmm.
the jury's still out on whether this works or not. And it's very easy for someone like me to have an opinion because my company was born or founded during COVID. It's small, and we were able to adapt to that out of the gate.
Hmm.
But other companies, and sorry, we set up our company in a way that it wouldn't be an issue. But other companies aren't as lucky. Other companies have a physical product, and if you have a physical product, you need to get people together
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
hold it,
Yeah.
even because
Yeah.
if your customers are holding it and it doesn't feel right, they're not going to buy it. So people
100%.
need to be in the same space, and
But
it's going to take another while, I believe, before that kind of shakes out. And I can see it going either way, honestly.
to be honest, like I'm so 2 months ago we had the TechCrunch disrupt in the Bay Area, and some people from came over here to the US, and I met them for the first time, remotebase.com and all. So that was very satisfying for me. I could meet them, I could work with them, and but the usefulness of it just disappeared in a few days. Like after a few days, I was more inclined towards going back to my monitor and do something that makes more sense, rather than just sitting with them. And also, working closely or working hand in hand has its value, but overall I think remote work makes us very, very productive overall, if we take a look at the larger picture here.
Yeah,
What do you think?
it does make like people very, very productive. Um, However, the there's when it comes to like quarterly planning, for example, where just the best way to do it is get people into a room and get on a whiteboard and figure stuff out, and it might
Yeah.
take days and days. Like there's no, it's very hard to replicate that remotely, and
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
uh, that's a challenge, and it's a challenge that we have as well. One of the ways we try and mitigate that is that I know we're a remote company, but a lot of the engineering is based in the same locality. So a lot of my engineering team is actually based between Ireland and the UK.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
in fact, I think the nearest engineer sitting to me right now is like 2 miles away from me. So if I really wanted to go and meet him, I could go and meet him.
uh,
So
yeah.
it's different for you by the sounds of it. If you're, the different time difference between the Bay Area and Pakistan, I must be what, 10, 11 hours?
Oh, it's 13 hours right now
8
because
hours.
of the
Actually,
daylight saving.
it's almost easier to counter from the other side, isn't it?
Yeah, it's easier that way.
So the uh, it's almost, it's going to take a while for all this to kind of settle down. I think we're years away from that yet, and you know, it's going to be shaped by what happens between now and then. And what happens between
Mm,
now and then is not entirely in everybody's control. We've got the economy. There's conflict in Europe. For Ireland, there's Brexit has an impact on us here.
mhm,
And who else knows what's going to happen next year? So
mm,
uh, you know the industry will march on. It'll have to decide what it wants, and it has players, very influential players like Apple and Salesforce and you know Meta and all these companies, setting the terms, and then you've got the
mhm,
smaller players like us trying to figure out an alternative. And where this is going to land is somewhere in the middle. And
mhm.
that's the industry. That's the conversation.
Yeah,
It's one slice of it, and that's why I
very
love this.
much. Very, very much. That's great, Brian. Brian, last 3 minutes, and I need something for our viewers and listeners as well. So, one last question,
Go for
and
it.
it's really important for me. So, what's your take on? So, what's your advice for the people who want to work remotely for the for the climate tech companies, companies in the climate tech. So what's your advice for such people? Because we need more talented people in the space. We need more people in the space,
Yeah.
and it would be good if more people are able to work remotely for this space. So what's your advice for such people?
Um, Maybe I'll break it down into two pieces of advice. the, for anyone working remotely, uh, people have to, yeah, the people have to engage, especially for new people in the industry who might be familiar with it. New entries to the industry in a remote environment, they have to put themselves out there. They have to ask
Mhm,
questions. They have to get involved and get in people's faces. It's from the
mhm,
other side of it. It's people can disappear sometimes.
mhm,
People can, if they're not asking questions or if they're not engaging, they can appear like they're not there, and even though they are there. So
mhm,
I, the
mhm,
advice would be to make sure you're known, or make sure your voice is heard in meetings. Speak
mhm,
up,
mhm.
and get engaged and get
Speak up.
involved, and write wikis, write blogs, get busy on Slack or Teams or whatever you use in your company, but make sure your presence is felt. It's so essential in this remote work environment. And then
Amazing.
for the other part of it, for people who want to get involved in climate tech,
Uh-huh.
get involved. The space, the space is
Yeah,
so wide. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
there's so many companies, and for the longest of time, the biggest companies in our space have been like ad tech companies, and a lot of great minds have gone into
Exactly.
making that
SaaS,
so
tech.
ruthlessly
Yeah, yeah,
efficient. If we could take
yeah,
10% of that and
yeah,
reapply it to
yeah.
the
Hundred
problems and
percent.
challenges of the climate, we're well on our way.
And the executives in this space are even open to having more talent, applying to for jobs and all. I think you guys are happy to have more talented people in the space
Oh, we
from all
need it.
around the world, obviously.
Uh, like the more brighter people, the like, this is this is a young person's challenge. Like, it needs young ideas. It needs Generation Z coming in and telling us what to do. It needs that energy,
Hmm.
uh, because it's essentially they're going to be the biggest benefactors from it. Or if we do nothing, they're going to be the
Exactly.
most affected by
Us
it.
all. So it's probably more of a responsibility for us to contribute, somehow
Yeah.
to this field.
I, and there's going to be companies, and it's not going to be different from any other industry. There's going to be winners and losers over the period of time. There's going to be big companies and small companies, but all these niche little companies who are bringing something new, uh, they're all valuable contributions. And I encourage more and more people to get involved.
Amazing, amazing. Well, Brian, thanks a lot for your time today. I learned
Oh,
a lot, and
you're more than welcome.
hopefully,
And it was great
if
being
it,
here, and thank you for inviting me. It's a great honor.
yeah, I mean, to be honest, I felt very connected with your journey, remote work and then working in the climate tech and then working for the giants as well. So it was really an insightful session for me. Thank you for your time, man. Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Perfect. I